by Ming Wei Shi will be about T-SGX, eradicating control channel attacks against enclave programs. Please.
Hello, is that clear? Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Ming Wei Shi from Georgia Tech. Today I'm going to present our work, T-SGX Extracting Control Channel Attack Against Enclave Program. This is joint work between Georgia Tech and Microsoft Research. Today, cloud is getting more and more important. One obvious evidence is the growing adoption in the IT industry. In the meantime, there's also a growing need for cloud security. According to recent Intel security report, it indicates that there's lots of sensitive data stored in the cloud, and also it's hard to protect the cloud. So Intel proposed this SGX as a practical solution. It is an extension to CPU that protect the data in the cloud against even untrusted cloud provider and cloud infrastructures. However, recent researchers have demonstrated that there is an accurate side channel against programs that protect by SGX. So by using this side channel, attackers can actually infer the sensitive information inside the SGX. Hence, this compromises the strong guarantees that are provided by SGX. Let's take a further look on how the attack works. SGX provides a hardware-based sandbox called Enclave, which protects the code and data inside against untrusted operating system. However, it still relies on operating system to do the resource management. For example, it still needs to map the code and data inside Enclave to the dedicated hardware memory. So in the threat model, assume that operating system is untrusted. So attacker have fully controlled the operating system. Attacker can actually use play around the page table by first unmap the page and wait for the enclave to execute. And until there's execute the unmapped page, and attacker can observe the exact page that is executed by the enclave program. By this noise-free primitive side channel, if the program inside the enclave, the memory access is highly dependent on the sensitive information, attacker can actually combine the offline analysis to obtain all the possible memory patterns and intentionally trigger the page fault, obtain the page fault sequence. Combine these together, attacker is able to infer the actual sensitive data inside Enclave. So in response to this serious attack, we propose T-SGX with the goals that we not only want to protect this attack, we also want the solution to be practical. That is, we don't want there's extra hardware modifications, and we also don't want the secured Enclave program take forever to run just if it is secure. And also, more importantly, we also want to minimize the developer effort so that developers don't need to rewrite the whole program to adopt our design, because it is impractical. T-SGX is mainly based on another CPU extension called Intel TSX. This is actually why we call it T-SGX. It is Intel TSX actually supports the hardware transaction memory. And what it does is developer can make a piece of code as a transaction by wrapping two instructions, xBegin and xEnd. And the instruction ensures atomic execution of the transaction code pieces. So if there race condition happen during the transaction, it will cause the transaction abort. And when abort happens, it will roll back all the changes during the transaction, and control will directly transfer a fallback point. And all this happen in the user space. And the key idea here is not only the risk condition will cause the transaction abort, the page fault, which we are interested in, will also cause the transaction abort. So when there's page fault happen, the processor will not deliver the page fault information to the operating system. Instead, it will cause the transaction abort and directly invoke the fallback code. So the result is that operating system can no longer observe if there's a page fault happen inside the transaction. So with this property, it makes our design much straightforward. The idea simply the strawman simply we make a whole enclave program as a whole transaction. And in this way, if there's happen to a page fault during the enclave program execution, the enclave can self-detect is there a possible page fault happen. So then now, instead of deliver the page fault, enclave now can react if there is a possible attack. However, it's not straightforward to directly use TSX on the SGX because TSX is not designed to apply to a large program. In particular, one main constraint is to the frequent timer interrupt. If the timer interrupt happens, it will also cause the transaction abort. In this way, if the single transaction takes too long to execute, it will keep aborting and it will never terminate at the end. Another main limitation of TSX is it buffers all the memory changes inside the cache. So if single transaction have much more memory access to cause the cache conflict, and it will also cause the transaction abort. So we conclude that single transaction cannot be too large. Otherwise, the execution will never terminate. We call these two main limitation as time constraint and cache constraints. To solve this problem, our solution is break the whole program into several tiny blocks called execution blocks. For the time constraint, we ensure that the single execution block will not exceed the time of the timer interrupt interval. And this is done through the execution time analysis. We also need to ensure that single blocks will not cause the cache conflicts. And it needs a sophisticated cache analysis. Due to the time limitation, please check the more detail of the analysis in the paper. So it's the end, but we want to still need, is there problems? Now we can feed a general program into by using TSX. But creating a transaction is not free. Setting up a transaction actually comes with a fixed cost. And it will more problematic if we frequently recreate a transaction. So in order to provide a reasonable overhead, we apply several optimization techniques to improve the performance. And we try to merge the continuous execution blocks when possible. Let's take an example of loop optimization we did. So if a loop with 1,000 iterations, if we simply make every loop body as a single transaction, it actually will require 1,000 transactions. But if through our analysis, the result shows that the whole loop can fit into the single transaction, then we can actually reduce the transaction number to 1. And noting that because the main point is we still need to make sure the transform program can fit into TSX. So we only apply the optimization when the result meets our conservative stack analysis. Another problem is on the break into execution blocks design is the TSX instruction is actually outside of transaction, which means that even we already break several execution blocks, the transaction boundary still vulnerable to the page fault attack. So if attacker know the different base block belongs to different boundary, page boundary, then by still unmap the page, and just right before the transaction begin, attacker can still see the page fault. And by doing so, attacker is still able to infer the page access pattern. So it's actually like going back to the original problems. To overcome this problem, we proposed a Springboard design. So what we did is we make sure that all the transactions begin and end at the Springboard page, a dedicated Springboard page. And by doing so, attacker cannot no longer to trigger page fault on all the execution blocks, and can only get, instead it can only get the one-page information. So this design is also can prevent more advanced attack. Think about if attacker can keep trigger abort on Springboard page, and by simply counting the page fault number, instead, so attacker may still have a chance to get the number, but to get the page access patterns. But by design, this attack is impractical, and due to time limitation, I will please check the paper for more detailed information. So we implement TSX as a compiler based on LLVM compiler. And to evaluate the TSX, we mainly focus on ask two questions. The first one is how general is TSX approach, and second one is how much overhead the TSX incur. So in our evaluation, we apply TSX to a benchmark switch tool called nbench, and also we apply the TSX directly to the attack targets in the previous control side channel papers. And the result that all the transformation is automatically and require no source code modifications. And for the performance, T-SGX incur about average 30 minutes, 30% memory overhead. And for runtime performance incur around 50% runtime overhead. And we also want to see, because both TSX and SGX is a hardware component, what is the effect when we run multiple instances? But the result shows constant overhead. We run up to 8 instances. To conclude our work, we propose and implemented T-SGX as an effective protection against control side channel attack. And more importantly, it requires no hardware modification and incur reasonable overhead compared to like software-based approach, like ORAN-based approach. And more importantly, it requires no developer effort to adopt the solution, the design. Thank you. I'm willing to take any questions.